The cold, metallic walls of the Galactic Empire's torture chamber hummed softly as the distant sound of machinery echoed through the silence. Eli, a young human child of barely 13, lay shackled to a high-tech, glowing table. His arms were pinned down, and his small body trembled under the weight of the cruel devices surrounding him. The chamber, far away from Earth, was designed for one thing: breaking the strongest of minds, forcing them to surrender their secrets. For weeks, Eli had endured unimaginable pain. The Empire's scientists had tortured him in every way possible, hoping to extract something valuable from his genetic code. They knew that humans were strong, resilient beyond measure, but they couldn't understand why. What made humans so different from other species? They didn't just want answers, they wanted to control humanity. They needed to know how Earth's people had survived countless struggles, wars, and hardships. But they underestimated one thing: the power of a human's will. With each passing day, the pain grew worse. The scientists used neural disruptors, devices that sent waves of excruciating pain into Eli's brain. His body shook violently with each pulse, but despite this, his resolve remained unbroken. He would not give them the satisfaction of seeing him crumble. His mind wandered back to Earth, to his family, to the memory of his grandfather, Admiral Marcus Grayson, who had once been a legend in the ancient fleet. Eli's eyes fluttered shut, and in the darkness, he could hear his grandfather's voice. "You are strong, Eli. The strength you carry is within you, no matter how small you are. Remember who you are." The memory of his grandfather brought him some comfort even in his darkest moments. Eli knew his family had been part of a great legacy, an ancient human fleet that had disappeared long ago. No one knew where they had gone, but Eli felt a deep connection to that history. It wasn't just about survival, it was about honor, strength, and the will to fight no matter the odds. In the torture chamber, the scientists continued their work, believing they could break Eli. They used devices designed to crack the strongest of wills, but Eli's mind was unyielding. They tried everything: physical pain, mental torment, and psychological manipulation, but none of it seemed to reach him. His eyes remained defiant, and his spirit unbroken. The head scientist, a cruel and calculating individual named Dr. Voss, stood over Eli, his cold eyes studying the child's reactions. "It's fascinating," Dr. Voss muttered to his assistant. "This human boy, he's withstood everything we've thrown at him. It's almost as if he's not like the others." He turned to Eli. "Why won't you break? Why are you so different?" Eli barely reacted, his lips trembling as he whispered, "Because I'm human, and we never give up." Dr. Voss was puzzled by Eli's words. Human. He'd heard that term many times before. But there was something different about this child. The boy's genetic profile was unlike anything they had ever seen. There was a strength embedded deep within his DNA, something that went beyond physical ability or endurance. There was something that spoke of a long-lost human legacy, something the Empire desperately wanted to understand. Suddenly, alarms blared across the chamber. The bright lights flickered, and Eli could feel the shift in the air. It wasn't just the pain that was breaking him. Something else was happening. Something big. The Empire didn't know it yet, but it had just underestimated a very important factor: Eli's family. Far away, in a hidden corner of the galaxy, Admiral Marcus Grayson stood on the command deck of his old ship, the Vanguard. His eyes scanned the stars, his thoughts focused on the child he had left behind. He had always known that Eli would be special, but this was different. The signals from the Empire's fleet had reached him. His heart sank. Eli was in danger, but there was more. A part of Grayson had always known that the day would come when the ancient fleet would be needed again. The ancient fleet, the fleet that had been thought lost, forgotten by most of the galaxy. Grayson's fleet had been a thing of legend, a fleet built with the most advanced technologies of their time. Cloaking devices, A-driven war machines, plasma cannons that could shatter entire starships with a single strike. The Empire had no idea what was coming for them. Grayson clenched his fists, feeling the weight of his decision. It had been years since he commanded the fleet, years since he had hidden it away in the farthest reaches of space. But it was time. His grandson was in peril, and the time to fight was now. He activated the fleet's ancient systems, and the long-lost ships began to stir. Back in the torture chamber, Eli was growing weaker by the minute. His body couldn't keep up with the torment much longer. But deep down, something within him refused to let go. His grandfather's voice echoed in his mind once more. "Never forget who you are, Eli. You come from a line of warriors, of survivors. You are the future of humanity." Then it happened. A strange vibration coursed through the walls of the chamber. The sound of engines, ancient yet powerful, reverberated in the distance. Eli's heart raced. Something was coming. Something that would change everything. In that moment, the torturers looked up, startled by the unexpected tremor. They had no idea that, in the depths of space, Admiral Marcus Grayson's ancient fleet was on its way. The fleet's cloaking systems engaged, rendering it invisible to the Empire's sensors. It was a ghostly force, a fleet that the Empire had never even imagined was still alive. The battle had begun. Eli's family, his legacy, was here to rescue him. The Galactic Empire had made a fatal mistake. They had tortured a human child, unaware that they were awakening the wrath of humanity's ancient protectors. And the galaxy would soon learn that humans were not to be underestimated. Eli's story was just beginning, and it would change the fate of the galaxy forever. As the fleet moved closer, Eli's strength surged. The pain from the torture seemed to fade as hope began to rise within him. He wasn't alone. His grandfather was coming, and with him, a fleet of power and technology the Empire couldn't even begin to comprehend. Eli could feel the surge of power from the fleet's arrival, a power he never thought he'd experience. And so, the child who had been tortured, the child who had been seen as weak, now found himself at the heart of a storm that would reshape the galaxy. Eli's chest heaved with each shallow breath. The pain still echoed through his body from the brutal sessions with the Empire's scientists. His wrists were raw, bound to the cold metallic table in the torture chamber. Yet, despite everything they had done to him, despite all the methods they used to break him down, Eli's mind remained steadfast, anchored by the one thing that had always been his strength, his family. His grandfather's voice lingered in his thoughts. Humans never give up, no matter the odds. The Empire, however, did not understand what they were dealing with. They were convinced that Eli's resilience was something unique, that he was just another human subject to experiment on. They couldn't fathom the truth, that Eli was no ordinary child. His bloodline was tied to something far greater than anything they could comprehend. He was the key to unlocking an ancient power that had been hidden for centuries. The scientists, led by the cold and calculating Dr. Voss, had been focusing all their efforts on Eli's genetic makeup, convinced that the human child held the secret to understanding what made humanity so resilient. They were wrong about one thing. They were looking at Eli as a mere specimen. But what they didn't know was that he was the living vessel of a legacy, the legacy of his grandfather's legendary fleet. As Dr. Voss and his team pored over Eli's genetic data, they began to uncover something startling. Within Eli's DNA was the unmistakable signature of a long-lost human fleet, one that had once commanded the stars. They had thought the fleet had vanished, erased from history. But here, in the cells of this seemingly fragile child, lay the answers they had been searching for. "The data," Dr. Voss murmured, tapping his fingers on the console. "It's almost like a star map. These coordinates are leading somewhere ancient." The Empire's scientists were stunned. The coordinates were unlike anything they had seen before. They were star systems that had long since been abandoned, forgotten by most of the galaxy. But the maps, etched in Eli's genetic code, pointed to something far more significant: a fleet. The fleet of Admiral Marcus Grayson, a name that had been whispered in the shadows of galactic history, a fleet known for its unmatched technology and military prowess. But the more they tried to decipher the maps, the more confused they became. These ancient star charts didn't match any known systems. They were from a time long before the Empire had risen to power, a time when humanity had once been feared across the stars. The Empire had no way of understanding these symbols, these maps encoded deep within Eli's very being. Eli, despite his pain, felt a flicker of hope. He didn't understand exactly what was happening, but deep down, he could feel it, the presence of something powerful, something alive, coursing through him. He could feel the strength of his family's legacy, a legacy that stretched back through the stars. It was as if his grandfather was still with him, guiding him through the darkness. Meanwhile, on Earth, Admiral Marcus Grayson had received an urgent distress signal. His heart clenched as he read the message. It was from the Galactic Empire, and it was about his grandson, Eli. The message was simple. The boy is in captivity, tortured. The Empire seeks to understand humans by breaking him. They believe he holds the key to your fleet. Grayson's mind raced. He had known that the Empire would eventually come for humanity's hidden power, but he had hoped it would never come to this. He had spent years preparing, hiding the fleet that had once been the pride of humanity. And now, it seemed that the time had come for it to rise once more. Grayson stood on the command deck of his hidden ship, the Vanguard, an old but formidable warship that had been restored with the best technology humanity had ever developed. His fingers hovered over the controls, ready to activate the fleet, but he hesitated for just a moment. Was Eli ready for what was coming? Was the child prepared to unlock the legacy of his ancestors? No, it didn't matter. Eli was strong, and Grayson knew that the time to act was now. The Empire had made a fatal mistake. They had taken Eli, thinking they could control him, but they had underestimated the power of human resilience, the power that flowed through Eli's veins. With a firm press of a button, Grayson activated the ancient fleet. The ships, hidden in the farthest reaches of space, stirred to life. They had been waiting, dormant for years, their cloaking systems ready to make them invisible to the Empire's sensors. The ships had been designed with the most advanced technology of their time, technology that was now far beyond the Empire's understanding. The fleet was about to unleash a storm unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Back in the Empire's torture chamber, Eli could feel the change. The pain from the devices on his body was still sharp, but it was beginning to fade. He felt a surge of energy, a warmth spreading through his chest. He knew, somehow, that his grandfather was coming for him. The legends were true. The fleet was real. The strength of his family was real. Dr. Voss was still obsessed with deciphering Eli's genetic data, but as he worked, he began to notice something strange. The coordinates in Eli's DNA were beginning to shift, moving in real time, adjusting as if the fleet was actually responding to the child's presence. The Empire had never seen anything like it. It was as if Eli and the fleet were bound together by some unseen force, a connection that ran deeper than anything the scientists could understand. As the torturers prepared to continue their brutal work, a sudden rumble shook the walls of the chamber. The lights flickered, and the ground beneath them trembled. The Empire's base was under attack. Dr. Voss's eyes widened as he looked at the monitors. "What is happening?" he demanded. "This is impossible. The fleet, it's here." The fleet had arrived. Admiral Grayson's ancient ships appeared in the sky, cloaked and invisible to the Empire's sensors. The ships, each one a masterpiece of human ingenuity, dropped their cloaks in an instant. The Empire's defenses were no match for the assault. Energy blasts tore through the base's outer walls, disintegrating the enemy forces with precision. Eli could feel the weight lift from his shoulders as the Empire's grip on him weakened. The air was charged with energy, the unmistakable presence of his grandfather's fleet now surrounding him. The time had come. The fleet thought lost to time had returned to reclaim its legacy and its people. In his final moments in the torture chamber, Ila's strength surged. The pain had diminished, replaced by an undeniable feeling of power. He remembered his grandfather's words once more. Humans never give up, no matter the odds. And now, with the fleet on its way, Eli understood the true meaning of those words. He wasn't just a child. He was the key to a power that had been hidden for generations. And so, the legacy of humanity, long forgotten and dismissed by the Empire, was about to be unleashed in full force. The battle for humanity's future had just begun. Admiral Marcus Grayson stood at the command deck of his flagship, the Vanguard, watching as the ancient fleet he had commanded so many years ago came to life once again. The fleet, thought lost to time and memory, was now more than a symbol of humanity's past. It was a force, a living testament to the ingenuity and resilience of humankind. Grayson's eyes narrowed as he saw the first of the ships uncloaking, its sleek hull shimmering as the ship became visible for the first time in centuries. The fleet was ancient, yes, but it was far from obsolete. Each vessel was equipped with technology far beyond what the Galactic Empire had ever seen. Cloaking devices that rendered them nearly invisible to enemy sensors, energy shields that could withstand even the most powerful weapons, and AI-powered war machines capable of independent tactical decisions. This was humanity's greatest weapon, and it had been hidden in the farthest reaches of space, waiting for the day when it would rise again. As the ships began to assemble in formation, Grayson activated the fleet's communication systems, sending a message to the rest of the fleet. "Engage the Empire," he ordered simply, his voice cold and resolute. Across the fleet, hundreds of ships responded in unison. They had been waiting for this moment, and now it was time to make their move. The first ship, the Black Eagle, uncloaked from the shadows of deep space, its massive hull reflecting the distant stars. The sight was breathtaking. A ship that had once been the pride of humanity, now emerging from the void as if from the very pages of history. As the ship became visible, its weapons systems activated, and the Empire's sensors, completely unprepared for such an event, failed to detect it in time. Moments later, a series of explosions rocked the outer defenses of the Empire's space station. A barrage of energy blasts streaked through space, tearing through the Empire's forces with precision. The shockwaves from the blasts sent shock ripples through the enemy ships. They had been caught completely off guard. The Black Eagle was not alone. More ships emerged from the depths of space, each one cloaked and then revealed in a stunning show of advanced technology. The Empire's command center scrambled as they saw this impossible fleet materialize out of nowhere, their most advanced detection systems unable to trace the human vessels. The human fleet moved with purpose, each ship a deadly instrument of war, powered by technology and tactics that the Empire could not even begin to understand. As the ships uncloaked, they immediately began to engage the Empire's forces, targeting the enemy's weak points with ruthless efficiency. Energy beams lashed out, striking Empire ships with terrifying force. Massive explosions filled the void of space as the fleet tore through the enemy lines, unstoppable and relentless. The battle between the ancient fleet and the Empire's forces was a sight to behold. The Empire's ships were modern and powerful, but they were nothing compared to the ancient vessels of humanity. The human fleet's superior technology made their opponents' weapons appear primitive in comparison. Every shot fired by the Empire's ships seemed to miss its mark as the human ships effortlessly dodged and retaliated. The Black Eagle led the charge, cutting through the Empire's defensive lines like a knife through butter. The ship's energy shields absorbed the impact of enemy fire, and the advanced AI systems guiding the ship's weapons ensured that every shot fired was precise. Every movement calculated for maximum damage. Aboard the Black Eagle, Grayson stood in the command center, watching the action unfold through the ship's massive viewport. His heart raced, not out of fear, but out of anticipation. This was the moment he had been waiting for, the moment his legacy would rise again. His hand gripped the command chair as he gave his orders to the fleet. "Target their capital ships. Disable them," Grayson commanded. The human fleet's weapons fired with deadly precision, targeting the Empire's flagship, a massive warship that had been the symbol of the Empire's dominance. The Black Eagle's energy cannons fired in quick succession, each blast striking the flagship with a force that sent ripples through the space station. Explosions erupted on the surface of the Empire ship, causing massive damage. The flagship began to break apart as its shields failed under the onslaught. The Empire's commanders scrambled, trying to regroup and defend their forces, but they were too late. The human fleet was too fast, too powerful. Aboard the Empire flagship, Captain Marlowe watched in disbelief as the once mighty warship was torn apart by the human fleet. He had spent years studying the Empire's rivals, but he had never encountered anything like this. The humans' tactics were like nothing he had seen before. Every move was calculated, every strike was precise. He had underestimated them, and now it was too late. "We've lost control," one of the officers shouted. "The human ships are outmaneuvering us. The shields are failing." The Empire's command center descended into chaos. The fleet's once dominant position was crumbling. The humans were not supposed to be this strong. They were supposed to be an afterthought, a primitive species to be crushed underfoot by the superior power of the Galactic Empire. But the humans were proving to be anything but that. On the battlefield, the humans fought with ferocity. Each soldier aboard the fleet's ships engaged in close-quarters combat against the Empire's forces. Advanced robots, built to fight alongside human soldiers, boarded enemy ships, tearing through their defenses and engaging in hand-to-hand combat with the Empire's soldiers. The contrast between the highly advanced human robots and the Empire's soldiers was stark. The humans fought not just with weapons but with an unbreakable will, a determination that came from centuries of struggle. In the midst of the chaos, Eli, still in the Empire's custody, could feel the shift in the air. The torture chamber that had once felt suffocating now seemed to tremble with an unseen force. He felt a surge of power, a connection to the ancient fleet. The ships that had once been legends were now real, and they were coming for him. As the battle raged on, the Empire's forces began to retreat. One by one, their ships were destroyed, torn apart by the relentless assault of the human fleet. The sound of explosions and the flash of energy weapons lit up the vast expanse of space. The once mighty Empire was faltering under the might of the humans. Grayson watched as the last of the Empire's flagship was disabled, its engines ruptured and flames spilling into space. The battle was all but won. As the smoke cleared, the fleet began to regroup. The human fleet, battered but victorious, remained in space, ready for whatever came next. The Empire had underestimated the humans, and now they would pay the price. For the first time in centuries, the balance of power in the galaxy had shifted. The underdogs had risen, and the Empire's reign of terror was crumbling. Eli, still trapped in the Empire's hold, could feel the victory in the air. His grandfather's fleet had arrived. The legacy of humanity was alive, and the Empire had no idea what they had unleashed. The battle was over, but the war had just begun. The battle in deep space raged on, and the air was thick with tension. Explosions tore through the void, lighting up the darkness with flashes of bright, fiery light. Above the battlefield, Admiral Marcus Grayson commanded his ancient fleet with cold precision. The ships of his once-lost fleet now danced around the Empire's forces, outmatching them at every turn. The humans were no longer the underdogs. They were the hunters, and the Galactic Empire was the prey. Eli, still imprisoned on the enemy's ship, could feel the weight of history pressing on him. His body ached from the brutal torture he had endured, but now he felt something different. There was a strange power coursing through his veins, something ancient, something that tied him to his family's past. The fleet his grandfather had commanded was no longer a distant memory. It was a living force, and it was coming for him. His mind raced as he thought of his grandfather, Admiral Marcus Grayson. the man who had taught him that humans never gave up, no matter the odds. The words echoed in his mind as he looked around the dark, cold room where he had been held captive for what felt like an eternity. The Empire believed they could break him, extract the secrets hidden within his genetic code, but they had underestimated one crucial thing: the strength of a human spirit, and Eli had inherited that strength. As the battle between the ancient fleet and the Empire's forces raged outside, Eli's resolve hardened. He had to escape, not just for himself, but for humanity. The memory of Bonner, the soldier who had stood by his side throughout the torture, flashed before his eyes. Bonner had been his protector, even in the darkest moments. The thought of losing him weighed heavily on Eli's heart, but he knew he had to move forward. Bonner had made a sacrifice for him, and he would honor it. The room around Eli was silent, save for the faint hum of the ship's engines. His captors had grown complacent, believing that the pain they had inflicted would break him. But Eli had other plans. Drawing on the strength he had inherited from his family's legacy, he began to move. The Empire had underestimated Eli. They had no idea the depth of his connection to the ancient fleet, and they certainly didn't understand the power hidden within him. As his fingers brushed against the cold metal of the room's walls, a strange sensation filled him. It was as though the very ship around him was alive, responding to his presence. He could hear the distant hum of the fleet, and for a brief moment, it was as if he was connected to it. With a sudden burst of energy, Eli used his newfound knowledge to outsmart his captors. He reached for a hidden control panel beneath the metal floor, knowing exactly where it was located from the brief memories that had surfaced. He had studied his grandfather's tactics, learning every detail about the fleet's systems. The controls were simple, but the power they unlocked was immense. The lights in the chamber flickered, and the door to his cell slid open. Eli felt a surge of adrenaline as he bolted from his prison. He had no time to waste. The ship was in chaos, with the Empire's forces scrambling to defend themselves from the relentless attack of the human fleet. Eli knew this was his chance. As he made his way through the darkened halls of the enemy ship, the sounds of battle reverberated through the walls. The Empire was losing ground, and the humans were advancing with brutal efficiency. Eli's heart raced as he moved faster, driven by the thought of his family's legacy and the memories of Bonner's words. The corridor ahead was blocked by a group of armed soldiers. Eli's instincts kicked in. He ducked behind a metal pillar and drew on everything his grandfather had taught him. Using the advanced tactics from the ancient fleet, he outmaneuvered the soldiers, slipping past them without a sound. It was almost too easy. His captors were too distracted by the chaos of the battle to notice the young human escaping. But as Eli turned a corner, he stopped dead in his tracks. In the dim light ahead, he saw a figure lying on the floor. It was Bonner, his mentor, his protector, the man who had kept him safe during the worst moments of his captivity. Bonner's body was surrounded by a pool of blood, and his eyes were closed. Eli's heart sank. He rushed to Bonner's side, his hands trembling as he tried to wake him. "Bonner, no, please." His voice cracked as he shook the soldier, but there was no response. Bonner was gone. The pain was sharp, like a knife through Eli's chest. He had lost someone he cared about, someone who had been like a father to him. The tears stung his eyes, but he wiped them away quickly. There was no time to mourn. Bonner's sacrifice would not be in vain. Eli knelt beside his fallen mentor, his emotions rising up like a tidal wave. He had seen the brutality of the Empire, but this was different. This was personal. Bonner had fought to protect him, and now Eli would fight to honor his memory. Bonner's final words echoed in Eli's mind, louder now than ever before. "Don't let them win. You're the future of humanity. You have to keep fighting. Never give up." With a final glance at Bonner's lifeless body, Eli stood up. He had to finish what they had started. The Empire's reign of terror would not go unchallenged, and he would be the one to ensure it didn't. As Eli made his way to the ship's escape pod, the sounds of the battle grew louder. The human fleet was nearing victory, But the Empire was not going to go down without a fight. Eli could feel the ship shaking as explosions ripped through the vessel. The Empire's forces were trying to regain control, but it was too late. The underdogs had already proven their strength. In the distance, Eli could see the escape pod. He could almost taste freedom. But before he could reach it, the ship's alarms blared, signaling the approach of more enemy forces. He had to hurry. His heart pounded in his chest as he sprinted toward the pod, narrowly avoiding the Empire's soldiers who were patrolling the corridors. With one final push, Eli reached the escape pod. He jumped inside, sealing the hatch behind him. The pod shot away from the enemy ship, racing toward the safety of deep space. As the pod soared through the void, Eli looked out at the battle raging behind him. The Empire was faltering, their once impenetrable grip on the galaxy slipping away. For the first time since his capture, Eli felt hope. The human fleet had proven their strength, and now it was his turn to carry on the fight. Bonner's sacrifice had given him the courage to escape, and now it was time to honor that sacrifice by ensuring humanity's survival. Eli knew the road ahead would be difficult. The Empire was vast, and their forces were formidable. But he had the legacy of his grandfather's fleet and the strength of his people behind him. The humans had always been the underdogs, but now they had something the Empire could never understand: unity, resilience, and the unwavering belief that they could overcome anything. The journey was far from over, but Eli was ready. He had been through hell, but he had emerged stronger. And now he was prepared to fight for the future of humanity, no matter what it took. The battle for survival had just begun. The final battle was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The heart of the Galactic Empire's command ship loomed ahead, its sleek, menacing form cutting through space like a giant predator stalking its prey. On board, the Empire's most advanced eye-controlled warships awaited, their systems ready to crush any opposition. But this time, the prey was no longer helpless. The underdogs, the humans, had arrived, and they were ready to fight back with everything they had. Admiral Marcus Grayson, commanding his ancient fleet, watched as his ships emerged from the depths of space, their cloaking devices shimmering out of sight, only to reappear in a flurry of fire and destruction. The Empire's commanders hadn't anticipated the power of these ancient ships, still equipped with technology far superior to what the Empire had. Now Grayson's fleet was at the heart of the battle, fighting for the survival of humanity, for the future of the galaxy. As the battle raged on, the Empire's ships, huge and intimidating, tried to regroup, but they were met with human resistance like they had never seen before. The humans fought with raw determination, using their wits and strength to overpower their far more advanced enemies. It was a clash of two worlds: the cold, calculating precision of the Empire's AI forces versus the passion and unpredictability of humanity. And in that chaos, humanity was emerging victorious. The command ship, a massive structure brimming with weapons and shields, became the focal point of the battle. Its enormous hull was battered by plasma blasts and energy beams from the human fleet. The Empire's eye-controlled warships fought fiercely, but they were being overwhelmed by the sheer will and innovation of the human forces. Inside the command ship, Eli was watching the battle unfold. After escaping from captivity, he had been reunited with his grandfather's fleet, and now he was ready to do his part. The memory of Bonner's sacrifice and the lessons he had learned from his grandfather fueled his every move. As the humans pressed on with the attack, Eli prepared himself to join the fight in the heart of the Empire's stronghold. He could feel the weight of his family's legacy on his shoulders. But this time, it wasn't just about survival. It was about taking back what the Empire had stolen from them: their freedom. The enemy was relentless, but the humans were more than ready. On board the Empire's command ship, AI-controlled soldiers, robots with advanced combat capabilities, fought with ruthless efficiency. They were designed for one purpose: to eliminate threats. But the humans, led by Grayson and Eli, were a threat unlike any the Empire had ever faced. The humans had something the robots didn't: humanity's greatest weapons: courage, adaptability, and an unbreakable will. The battle shifted to close-quarters combat as human soldiers stormed the corridors of the command ship, engaging in intense hand-to-hand combat with the robots. Plasma weapons hissed through the air, their beams cutting through metal, while energy swords clashed with the robots' steel bodies. The humans fought with a raw intensity, knowing that every move could be their last. The air was thick with the sounds of combat: the crackling of plasma, the hum of energy swords, and the metallic thud of robot bodies crashing to the ground. Eli, armed with a plasma sword, joined the fray. He moved with the fluidity and precision of a seasoned warrior, despite his youth. His mind flashed back to the teachings of his grandfather, who had once fought in battles like this one. Eli's training had been intense, but it had prepared him for moments like this. The robots, cold and unfeeling, attacked with precision, but they were no match for the human fighters who fought with heart. The battle was fierce and brutal, but the tide was turning. The AI-controlled warships, once thought to be invincible, were now on the defensive. Each strike from the human fleet weakened the Empire's control over its ships. The advanced robots were being dismantled one by one, their mechanical limbs crashing to the ground as human soldiers pushed forward. The sight was awe-inspiring. The underdog humans, outnumbered and outgunned, fighting back against the might of the Empire with everything they had. The ship's interior was a chaotic battleground. Sparks flew as plasma blasts tore through walls, and the clang of metal on metal rang out as robots and humans collided in brutal combat. Every hallway became a battleground, with humans fighting for their lives against machines designed to be superior. But no machine could replicate the heart of a human being, and that heart drove the humans forward. Outside, the battle in space was reaching its peak. Orbital bombardments rained down on the Empire's capital ship, shaking it to its core. The explosions lit up the dark void of space, a symphony of destruction as the humans tore through the Empire's defenses. The command ship shuddered under the relentless assault, and cracks began to form in its once impenetrable shields. The Empire's eye, which had once controlled the entire ship with flawless precision, now faltered, its systems overloaded by the human fleet's brutal offensive. Inside, the battle raged on. Eli's team fought their way to the heart of the command center, where the final confrontation awaited. The AI controlling the ship's systems was a complex network, but it was beginning to show signs of weakness. Its once perfect control over the ship's operations was slipping, and with every passing moment, the humans drew closer to victory. Eli and his team reached the central hub of the Empire's control room. The massive screens before them flickered with static as the AI's influence over the ship waned. The Empire's last line of defense was crumbling. But the humans weren't done yet. Eli stood at the front, plasma sword in hand, ready to deal the final blow. The AI, in its final moments, attempted to retaliate, unleashing its last wave of robotic soldiers to defend the command center. But it was too late. The human soldiers fought through the last wave of machines with the same fierce determination they had shown since the beginning. Every strike was a blow for freedom, every fallen robot a victory for humanity. The final confrontation was intense, but it only lasted a few moments. With one final powerful strike, Eli disabled the last of the AI systems. The room fell silent, save for the distant sounds of the battle outside. The lights flickered, and then, as if acknowledging its defeat, the AI's presence within the ship faded into nothingness. The humans had won. The Empire's reign of terror was over. The fall of the AI-controlled systems symbolized the end of an era of oppression and control by cold, unfeeling machines. The humans had triumphed, not just because of their superior technology, but because of their strength, their heart, and their belief in something greater than themselves. The battle was won, but the war was far from over. The humans had proven their resilience, and their victory sent a clear message to the galaxy. Humanity was no longer an underdog. They were a force to be reckoned with. As the battle outside subsided and the remnants of the Empire's fleet drifted into space, Eli looked out into the vastness of the galaxy. The stars seemed brighter now, and for the first time, he felt the weight of his grandfather's legacy settle within him. Humanity had won, and it was just the beginning. The final moments of the battle were a blur of explosions, flashes of light, and the deep hum of engines as Admiral Grayson's fleet executed its final assault on the Galactic Empire's command ship. The once mighty Empire, with all its technological might, had been brought to its knees by a force they had underestimated: humanity. With a thunderous roar, the command ship, once the center of the Empire's power, began to disintegrate in a series of massive explosions. The AI-controlled systems that had ruled the ship for centuries were finally wiped out, leaving only the shattered remnants of what had once been a symbol of the Empire's superiority. Grayson watched from the bridge of his flagship, a quiet sense of triumph filling him as the last of the Empire's defenses fell. The destruction of the command ship was the final blow to the Empire's once unyielding control, but it had come at a great cost. The battle had been long and grueling, and many lives had been lost along the way. The human fleet had been battered, with several ships destroyed and countless soldiers falling in the heat of battle. Yet through sheer will and determination, humanity had triumphed. Eli, now safely aboard one of the surviving ships, sat in a quiet corner of the command deck, his thoughts distant. His hands were still shaking from the intensity of the battle, and the faces of the fallen soldiers who had fought alongside him were etched into his mind. He had never known war in such a way before. The loss of friends, allies, and mentors had been more than just painful. It had been a reminder of the price of victory, but there was no time to mourn. There was still work to be done, still a galaxy to save. As the last of the battle's echoes faded, Eli made his way to the ship's observation deck. He gazed out into the vastness of space, watching as the remnants of the Empire's fleet drifted, defeated and broken. The stars twinkled in the distance, a serene and peaceful sight in stark contrast to the chaos they had just left behind. His grandfather, Admiral Grayson, joined him, placing a comforting hand on Eli's shoulder. "You did it, Eli," Grayson said, his voice filled with pride. "Your bravery will be remembered forever." Eli turned to face his grandfather, his eyes filled with both pride and sadness. "We lost so many," Eli said, his voice barely above a whisper. "But we won. We stopped them." Grayson nodded solemnly. "The price of freedom is always steep, but it's worth it. You've proven that, Eli. You've shown the galaxy what humanity is capable of. And now we have a chance to rebuild. We can make a future, a better future, for all of us." Eli stood in silence, his gaze once again drawn to the stars. The galaxy felt different now. The fear, the oppression, the uncertainty, they had all been lifted by the actions of his people. The fight wasn't over, but humanity had proven they could stand up against even the greatest of odds. And for the first time in a long time, Eli felt hope. Hope that things could get better. Hope that they could rebuild from the ashes of the Empire's reign. Grayson's voice broke the silence again. "There's a long road ahead. The galaxy is vast, and we've only just begun. But I believe in you, Eli. You've got the strength, the heart, and the courage to lead. You're part of something much bigger now, something that will inspire generations to come." Eli turned back to his grandfather, a small but determined smile on his face. "I'll carry the weight of this legacy, and I'll make sure humanity never forgets the cost of freedom." The two stood side by side, looking out into the expanse of space. The human fleet had been hailed as heroes across the galaxy. News of their victory spread like wildfire, reaching even the most distant corners of the universe. The Empire's reign of terror was over, and for the first time in generations, the people of the galaxy could breathe freely again. Eli and his grandfather were at the forefront of this new era. As leaders of the human fleet, they had earned the respect and admiration of countless beings, both human and alien alike. Their courage had inspired not just their own people but the entire galaxy. The victory over the Empire had sent a powerful message. Humanity was no longer to be underestimated. They had faced the greatest challenge of their existence and emerged victorious. In the days that followed, Eli and Grayson worked together to rebuild what had been lost. They formed alliances with other races, forged new diplomatic relations, and began the long process of restoring peace to the galaxy. It was a daunting task, but it was one they were ready to face. They had proven that they could overcome the odds, and now they would do it again. This time, by rebuilding a galaxy torn apart by war. As Eli stood in front of a crowd of his fellow humans, the weight of the moment settled in. He was no longer just a boy from Earth. He was a symbol of hope, a symbol of the resilience and strength of humanity. The cheers of the crowd echoed in his ears as he looked out at the sea of faces, some familiar and some new, but all united in their belief in a better future. Eli raised his hand in a silent gesture of acknowledgement. The crowd fell quiet, and for a moment, all was still. "We've won," Eli said, his voice carrying across the vast hall. "But this victory isn't just mine. It's ours. It's the victory of every soldier, every ally, every person who fought for a future free of oppression. We've shown the galaxy that humanity is not just a force to be reckoned with. We are a force of hope. And no matter what challenges come our way, we will face them together. Because we are human, and we never give up." The crowd erupted into applause, their voices echoing through the halls of the human fleet's flagship. It was a moment of triumph, of redemption, and of hope. The victory over the Empire had been hard-won, but it had opened the door to a new chapter in the galaxy's history. And for Eli, that was just the beginning. As he looked up at the stars once more, a sense of peace settled over him. The journey was far from over, but he was ready. Ready to face whatever came next, ready to carry on his grandfather's legacy, and ready to ensure that humanity's future would be one of peace, freedom, and hope for all. And so, the hero's legacy was sealed. The galaxy had been saved, but the true victory lay in the hearts of those who fought for it. The future was bright, and as long as humanity had people like Eli, the stars would always shine just a little bit brighter.